Okay, so we are now on to our support pieces. So these are pieces that don't necessarily get the equipment to run like it needs to run, but it helps it out. And we like when it gets helped out. We like convenience. We like when our data is a little bit more scientifically sound. And this is the very first piece that we are going to talk about. And it is called a humidifier. Yeah. So just like maybe a humidifier that you would buy for your home, we have a humidifier on the inside of the instrument. So where is this humidifier going to be located? Okay, so I need to show you that schematic again. And here's the schematic. And we've worked ourselves through a couple of pieces already, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the areas that we've talked about. We've talked about the syringe pump and all of the tubing that comes through that 8-point valve. And then the syringe we've talked about. We've talked about the catalyst tube. We've talked about the catalyst beads that go on the inside. We've talked about the furnace. We've also talked about the detector. And that's kind of where we stopped in the last video. So everything that I have not highlighted, we've not really mentioned yet. But those are the major pieces that get the TOC instrument to work. All right, so let's talk about the humidifier. So number one, where is it? In the schematic, where is it located? The humidifier is located down here at number 8. All right, so it looks like a bottle to me, right? And it looks like this humidifier has a line that runs up and over to the side that goes into the area where the combustion tube is at. So this is the area of the schematic that I'm going to find the humidifier. So once again, do not be surprised if you see this schematic on a test with all of these blanked out and I've asked you to label pieces and parts. So that's where the humidifier is going to be. All right, so it looks like it needs to be close to the combustion tube. It also looks like it plays a role in something that happens in the combustion tube. Otherwise, it wouldn't be directly connected to it like it is. All right, so let's take a look at where this humidifier is going to be located. If I open up the front door, the humidifier is going to be here, very accessible to you. And the reason is because you do have to double check the humidifier when you start the instrument up and as you run samples. You can't really see it here too well though. This black box that's right here in the center, nothing really there. There's your oven. My combustion tube is on the inside of that. My combustion tube tip sits down here at the very bottom, and that's where that white connector piece is going to. All right, I know it's got to be nearby. It's going to be over in this area, right-hand corner. I'm going to find the humidifier. Well, if we zoom in a little bit, and I'll show you another picture, maybe at a different angle, you can see that humidifier a little bit better. And there it is. This right there is the humidifier. This entire piece, this plastic cap that sits on top, and then this vessel that looks like it has some water in it, right? Or some liquid at least, and it is water. And it looks like there's some tubing lines that come into it and out of it up here at the very top. All right, well, that humidifier is important. It does serve a role, and I'll tell you what that role is in just a minute. But it's also something that's very quick and easy for us to double check just to make sure that it is in proper usage. And what I mean when I say that is that this humidifier has to have water. The purpose of the humidifier is to provide water or water vapor to an area that would need it. So it's got to be able to have a water source in order to do that. So I've got to make sure that water is in this vessel at all times. And on the side of this, there will be a minimal and there will be a maximal line. Okay? So you want to make sure that this is filled with water up to the max level or close to the max level at all times. All right, now it's very easy to do this. The only thing that you have to do is that there is a cap. There's a plastic cap that sits right here on that humidifier. It just really sits down on top of there. It doesn't screw down or anything. It just sits there. Okay, well, you just lift that off, and when you do that, get a water bottle and just squirt water down inside of that humidifier until you bring it back up to the line of where it needs to be. It's as simple as that. That's all that you have to do. But it's a very important step because this is a variable that will stay constant and it will give us better data. So check the humidifier level. Make sure that you have a proper amount of water in that container before you run samples or before you continue to run samples, because it will get used over a course of time. Okay? This bottle can actually be removed. It doesn't have to stay nestled into here, right? You see this black bracket that kind of locks it in step? Well, this can be lifted up and it can be taken out without a problem. If you do take it out, this is what that would look like. And you can clearly see now the max and the min that's stamped on the bottle. So here you see a low and here you see a high as far as the water level is concerned. Okay, this is the plastic lid that's set on top, and this kind of U-shaped tubing, that is what sits on the inside, of course, right? So here's the plastic lid that was lifted off so you could squirt water down in there from a water bottle, and then one piece of tubing leads somewhere and the other piece of tubing leads somewhere else. So that is a little bit about the humidifier. Now, what exactly does it do? Well, it supplies moisture to the carrier gas. So this carrier gas is, of course, air. And this helps everything to stay at a constant humidity. This is a variable that will begin to change data. Now, does it have a drastic effect? Not necessarily, but it is something that I want to put into a machine to stabilize, to completely cut out that variability that might happen from a day-to-day operation. So air is coming into the machine. That air could carry moisture, right? Or that air might not carry as much moisture, depending on what it is and where it came from and where it's located and the source of it. So if there is a difference in the humidity of the air that goes through that combustion tube, the purpose of this humidifier is to supply it with extra moisture, extra water vapor, so that way the humidity stays constant. Now, not only do you want to make sure that the water is filled with just a squirt bottle, but the reason that I mentioned taking it out is because sometimes you have to clean it. You know, over time, that water is going to get sludgy and nasty, and it's going to kind of build up like most of the water samples do. So we've got to remove this, and we've got to be able to take the lid off of it, and we've got to be able to give it a very good cleaning, all right? So the lid just pops off. Empty all the contents on the inside out and give it a good soaking in just distilled water, really is all that you need. And then make sure that you rinse out the bottle on the inside really well with distilled water, and then just put it all back together, and then make sure it's filled and make sure that you put it back into the location of where it came from. Notice I said no soap. Soap is normally not needed here unless you've just ignored it so much that it is that filthy and disgusting. So if you do use soap, you're going to have to make sure that it is rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and double rinsed. Okay, make sure that it is completely clean of any kind of soap residue that might be left behind. So preferably you don't want to use soap when you begin to clean this area. A good rinsing with DI water is typically enough, and that's all that it needs to clean that area out. It's only seeing distilled water or deionized water, so therefore nothing major should be happening here unless you've just not touched it for years. and then we've got a bigger problem on our hand. So that is cleaning what we would call the humidifier, and that is the purpose of the humidifier in the instrument. It helps maintain a constant humidity level. All right. So just a simple little piece on the front. That's the location of it again. And the purpose of this is to supply moisture to the air intake of the instrument to make sure that the humidity is staying constant. Again, on the schematic, you're going to see it here. And it looks like this tubing line is leading directly to the combustion tube. And that's exactly where it's at. And that is the purpose of one of those pieces of tubing that you saw leaving the lid or that plastic cap. Okay? All right, so that's all that we need to say of the humidifier, right? It's a piece. It's something that I should look at. It's something that we have to maintain. It's something that I might have to fill up one day, but that is something that I cannot forget about. Okay, so there is your first, what I would call, support piece to the instrument, and it just helps you get a little bit of better data at the very end. So in the next video, now that we've talked about a humidifier, then we also need to talk about a dehumidifier. That's right. We put it in on one side and we remove it on the other. Go figure.